I know a young couple, newly married, hardly settled in, who, after seeing a story on television about the situation of orphans in Sierra Leone, the poorest country in the world, got up the next day and started making phone calls to embassies and congresspersons till they made the connection that put them on a plane to Africa to establish the residency requirements that would legitimize their application for adoption there. It's a wonderful story, and there are thousands more like it. And yet, at the same time, we also read about the abuse of children, and the beating of the innocent, and the fleecing of the ignorant, and of armies that rape and pillage and practice genocide. The very thought of it all is mind-boggling. The very thought of all those things leaves the soul breathless. How do we account for so much inhumane treatment by one human being of another? Or just as seriously, how do we account for such reckless compassion in the midst of so much cloying evil? The question is not new. It's a classic one, in fact. Scholars have been debating it for years. Bernard Mandeville, for instance, English moral philosopher of the 17th century, first posed the question that has shaped the nature of that problem for over 400 years until our own time. The question, as Mandeville posed it, is a clear one. If you see a child about to be dropped into a fire pit, Mandeville asked, and you lunge to catch it, are you saving that baby because you're really convinced that the life of another must be saved, or because of what we now call aversion arousal, because the very thought of burning flesh makes you sick? Some say compassion is a given. Others say compassion is a scam. So who's right and why? Is there a basic goodness in us? Or do Jesus and the Talmud, the Brahma, the Buddha, and the prophet all present the world with an ideal beyond the possible? Answers to the question abound. Whole institutions now exist devoted entirely to this issue. Do we do unto others because it makes us feel good about ourselves? Or do we do good for others more out of a concern, maybe, for our public image than for the quality of our personal morality? Each of those explanations have been long held and often seem true, but they do not account for the massive outflow of human concern that keeps our private little worlds spinning toward rightness day after day after day. We need better answers than those, and those answers come from two places. The first answer, the unlikely one, comes out of science and neurobiology. In laboratories around the globe now, with technologies unknown until our own age, neurologists are conducting one test after another: MRIs, brain scans, electrographic prints, neurotransmitters, genetic codes, and evolutionary paleontology that measure, in other words, human emotional responses and reactions to other people's pain. Evolutionary scientists tell us that later-day evolution of the limbic brain, with its capacity for feeling, for emotions, for bonding, marks the human as more human the less self-centered we are. The brain, in other words, is hardwired for compassion. Compassion is not a social facade. Compassion is not a sham designed to mask our essential self-centeredness. Compassion is the emotion that links us to those outside ourselves. It is the capacity for outreach. It enables us, it drives us to go beyond ourselves to the beating pulse of the rest of the world. Compassion, then, is a veritable dimension of what it means to be fully human. The other proof, the second proof, the overwhelmingly improbable proof of the universalism of compassion is religion. Religions, with all their diversities of creeds and canons, rituals and liturgies, all their conflicting truth claims, all their standard brand assertions of superiority, all of their traditional differences, have two things in common. At the base of every religion, however distinct, however unique they claim themselves to be, stand two common pillars. One, the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And the other, the undisputed and indispensable moral compass of them all, compassion. The unwavering ability to feel pain that is not our own. In Hinduism, compassion is one of the three central virtues. In Buddhism and its commitment to end suffering, compassion is the very core, the warm center of the tradition. In Judaism, the Talmud teaches, that which is hateful unto you, do not impose on others. In Christianity, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, is a constant theme. In Islam, 113 of the 114 chapters of the Quran open in the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. It is compassion, then, that is the divinely dangerous glue of the human race. So what can you and I do to make compassion possible in a world reeling from the relegation of it to prayer books and pretty pictures? First, we must learn to be silent long enough to listen, to hear the cry of the other, to attend to someone else's needs. Listening is at the center, the very core of compassion. But listening is not enough. Second, we must be willing to remember the sharp edge of suffering's past, our own. The way we process our own pain determines how we will deal with everyone else's pain as well. To ignore pain, or to deny it, or suppress it, does not prepare us to respond well to what we hear from others. On the contrary, this is exactly what leads us to tell other people to get over it, to ignore it, to offer it up. It's exactly those attitudes that perpetuate injustice, that make the pain of the world invisible to the world. The third dimension of compassion is experience. To get that, we have to step outside our comfort zone. We have to find our way into the lives of those who suffer until their sufferings scrape away our indifference to it. And fourth, we must cull our own spiritual ideals for our attitudes toward pain, our hopes for human community, our ideas about the will of God for all humankind, and our commitment to translate compassion into action. Finally, we know now that compassion to be learned must be seen in action, which means that you and I must model it, so the next generation A generation raised on drugged-up celebrities and professional profiteers will have alternatives to choose from. In order to change the world, then, to be a real sign of change, we need to join with others. We need to commit ourselves to groups whose very purpose is compassion. It's up to people like us, then, to remember the compassion that saved us somewhere along the way, and then to stand up and pass that goodness on. One can never pay in gratitude, Anne Morrow Lindbergh wrote. One can only pay in kind somewhere else in life. We don't give things to people because they need them or deserve them. We give things to people because someone somewhere gave to us. And now it's our turn. The foundation of compassion, then, rests on the scientific awareness that as human beings, we need one another to come to the fullness of our own humanity. Religions teach us that we need to be catalysts for kindness. We need to be a reservoir of understanding for the world. We need to be signs of the compassionate one, the Brahman, the Buddha, the Messiah, the Christ, the prophet, whom we tell ourselves we follow. And we need to be it now, while there is still a world for compassion to cultivate.